This is a follow-up to the video I did on the 6.2 Retribution Paladin changes. No sooner had I uploaded the video than within hours they'd actually changed slightly the 2 and 4 set bonuses for tier. Now, the changes are largely superficial. They actually make it slightly better, but in nature they still do the same thing. So the conclusions I came to in the last video are still valid now. But I'm still going to look at what this means for the way Retribution is likely to play, because given that all they did was change numbers really on those set bonuses, and given the opposition to them, it's pretty clear, I think, that they are not actually going to change the nature of the way those set bonuses work. So I'm going to say that's probably pretty set in stone now. So the changes are that the 2 set now means that our exorcism reduces cooldown on our Avenging Wrath by 6 seconds. It's no longer a chance, and 6 seconds is a decent chunk. As such, there's no doubt it's an improvement. However, the core issue still remains that we're going to have to use a weak holy power generator to get an effect which we might never fully use. As I said before, we simply don't always use our Avenging Wrath on cooldown. Take Thogar, for example. I use it on the pull. I use it a second time as it comes off cooldown. Great. Okay. But the third time I use it is I'm waiting for a man at arms. So I actually hold off using it for that third time. So if I'd used exorcism to reduce my cooldown in such a situation, and then don't take advantage of that because I'm holding on to Avenging Wrath, then I've actually wasted. I could have used Crusader Strike or Judgment, higher damage holy power generators. Now, it's all very well comparing that to a tier 17 fight. Of course, we have to look at the new set bonuses through the prism of tier 18, for which they are designed. Well, we had a go at Council on the PTR this week, and the same thing basically applies. Each of the bosses, the 3 bosses, basically go batshit crazy when they drop below 30%. As such, once you reach 30%, you want to be blowing your cooldowns. Now, being able to reduce the cooldown of Avenging Wrath might actually help a little there, if it's not going to be a 2-minute gap between each one, but probably not as much as you'll naturally reduce it by prioritizing Exorcism. So we'll still likely be wasting a lot of damage. And again, it still makes it very difficult to plan. Because how do you know when you're going to get to that 30%? It depends on not just your play, but everyone else's play as well. But how much damage will this lose us? That's the question. I can't really answer it. You need the services of a good theory crafter for that one. Because the thing is, let's say Exorcism ended up being close in damage to Crusader Strike and Judgment, taking into account Mastery and Seal procs. Wouldn't be a problem then. Okay. However, if Exorcism ended up being much weaker than the other 2 standard use holy power generators, then it becomes a large chunk of damage that we lose. Now, I'm going to have to put my hands up and say that I don't know how much damage we're going to lose, or even if it will be significant, but I suspect it will be, as Exorcism has never been strong on single target in its own right. There's nothing to suggest from the PTR that this is going to change, and the fact that they keep making Exorcism do shiny things with our set bonuses is basically an admission from Blizzard that it is never going to be a strong ability in its own right. The 4 set has changes so that now we get 4% extra damage every second for 10 seconds. Okay, dull, yes. But this takes the annoyance out of the bonus. It means we can still fire off Execution Sentence as we pop Avenging Wrath, and it'll work out fine, with a decent chance that our random trinket procs could still be up, especially on the pull. It won't help much with the Archimon trinket on the pull. As I've said before, all the new elements we're going to have to get used to kind of work against each other in tier 18. Now, all of this does mean that I'm now pretty certain that we're going to end up using Empowered Seals and Sanctified Wrath as standard. Empowered Seals because the haste works well with both the Archimon trinket and the 2 set. Sanctified Wrath because Holy Avenger just will not line up with the Avenging Wrath except on the pull. Completely different cooldowns. The other problem we're going to face is the sudden and massive change of play style, and there are limited opportunities to ease yourself into it. For example, at what point will you want to drop your tier 17 for the tier 18? Do you want to go half and half with both tiers 2 set bonuses, or wait until you can go straight to the 4 set from tier 18? Don't know. Either way, once you get that tier 18 2 set, you'll want to switch to Empowered Seals immediately. Like, you could literally have to be using Final Verdict an ability you've been used to using for months by the time 6.2 comes out, if you haven't already, and then suddenly have to switch to Empower Seals for the very next boss a few minutes later. It's well worth preparing for this in advance by making sure you'll be able to track the buffs. AoE also changes. You no longer need to weave, but simply to switch to Divine Storm. Again, something else we're going to have to change our mindset on. Either way, once you get that tier 18-2 set, you're going to want to switch to Empowered Seals immediately. Like, you could literally have to be using Final Verdict, an ability you used to be using exclusively for months now, especially when 6.2 comes out, and suddenly have to switch to Empowered Seals for the very next boss a few minutes later. So it's going to be well worth preparing for this in advance by making sure you're able to track the buffs. AoE will also change as you no longer need to weave, but simply switch to Divine Storm as soon as it will do more damage than Templar's Verdict. Now, whether this will be on 2 or 3 targets depends on final numbers again. For example, the nerf to Mastery weakens Divine Storm compared to Templar's Verdict. Beyond these thoughts, however, it would be silly to try and go any further into the implications as they depend on ability tuning. Of course, anything can change at any time during PTR, but I do feel we're not going to get much of a budge on the nature of the set bonuses, so we're likely to have to look forwards to a tier where Empowered Seals and Sanctified Wrath is as common as Final Verdict and Divine Purpose at the moment. Talent choices, well, not for us, but then, let's be fair, how many classes really do have a genuine talent choice? So, in summary, where are we then? Well, we're wanting to crank out as many exorcisms as possible. That means Empowered Seals for the haste buff. However, to use Empowered Seals, we have to spend a number of empty cooldowns to maintain the two 20-second buffs. This, of course, also means we need to sneak in a couple of judgments within that short time frame. In addition, we need to maintain as far as possible the 3 stacks of the Archimon trinket by using Crusader Strike. One thing's definitely for sure, we're going to have a massively busy rotation where every second spent not hitting abilities is going to cost us like never before. We also have to have one last little gripe about the Archimon trinket as well, especially after having to go at the first encounter, Hellfire Assault on the PTR. This is the epitome of hectic ad cleave. We will never get the 3 stacks during that fight, and so the trinket will basically go to waste. Now, for the first boss, okay, who really cares? But if there are other fights, especially some of the harder ones, where we have to switch targets regularly, then we're going to be in bad shape again. I'm not going to reach for the tinfoil hat and say Retribution can't afford another tier where we're weak at the business end of it again. But if that does happen, it's certainly not going to do our representation any good either. As a side note, not all related to Retribution directly, more melee, but it's nice to see that the melee-hating nature of some fights has continued into Hellfire Citadel, the Infernals on Manaroth causing all sorts of trouble in Phase 1.